You were probably taught in school that the Crusades were a moment of insanity, where evil fanatics rode out to murder innocents in an offensive war. This is not only completely false, this is a slander directed at the very heart of Western civilization. The Crusades were a desperate, defensive response to nearly 460 years of constant Caliphate wars of conquest. 2/3 of the Christian world fell. Territories which are now considered Muslim lands were made so by force. By the time of the First Crusade in 1096 AD, all of the North African and Middle Eastern Christian kingdoms had been subjugated. The Holy Land was conquered, Iberia was under Caliph rule, France was threatened by both sea and land, Italy was constantly raided, her peoples enslaved and sold in the most brutal and inhumane slave trade in history. The Mediterranean, once the lifeblood of European commerce, had become a hellhole of piracy and raiders, cutting access to vital resources and food. And Eastern Europe, on the brink of collapse at the hands of the Seljuk Turks. It was in this context that the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I sent out a desperate plea to Pope Urban II. This was a monumental shift. Ever since the Great Schism, Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox did not get along. But in that moment, the Byzantines weren't schismatics, they were Christian brothers in need, and so Rome answered, because it wasn't just Europe that was threatened, but Christendom itself. And so a crusade was called, literally meaning a bearing of the cross, and the Christian nations answered. Now you might be wondering, how well did the medieval transcontinental military operation, coordinating armies that didn't even speak the same language, do against some of the most powerful empires in history? Just the logistics alone would be a nightmare. The result was total Christian triumph. The Byzantines would continue on for hundreds of years more. The Reconquista in Iberia was strengthened and ultimately victorious. The Mediterranean was secured, allowing for the flourishing of trade that enabled Europe to grow. The Holy Land was retaken and pilgrims were now protected. So in light of such an obviously justified conflict, you might ask, why then do we slander it? Put simply, because the distinct civilization of the West was born when the First Crusade was called. An attack on the Crusades is an attack on the legitimacy of Western civilization. The Western hero archetype is the crusader, and all of the West's greatest deeds were born from crusading, even when we don't call them such. The ending of worldwide slavery and human sacrifices were crusades. The fight against world poverty and diseases were crusades, all led by Christian men who decided they were going to be crossbearers. Long before we called ourselves the West, we used to call ourselves Christendom. Because our ancestors knew we are a civilization of crossbearers. The West will stand for as long as men are willing to crusade. Not a second less, not a second more.